Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Secret Sauce of Selling podcast, the ultimate guide and sales gym to unlocking the secrets of successful selling. I'm your host, James Abraham, and I'm excited to be here today to share insights, tactics, and strategies, attitudes, behaviors, and techniques that help you and your team take your performance and sales leadership to the next level. And this week, we have a special guest, Bill Bartlett from Sandler. Welcome, Bill.
James, thank you so much for the invite. It's always a joy to be with you.
The pleasure is all mine, and we have an amazing topic today. Bill, why don't you give everybody a quick intro of who you are, how you got into sales, and how you got to where you are today, and what is the topic we're talking about?
Many years ago, sales was a career. I was actually going to be a dentist. And then I thought, well, I've got to put my hands in people's mouths. So dentistry wasn't so appealing at that point. And so sales was the natural career for me. I started in the consumer products industry with Gillette and with companies like Sunshine Biscuits and that. And then 1994, I ran into David Sandler and purchased my business from David Sandler. So that's almost 30 years ago. And I thought I was building a sleepy little business, but what I found is I had a business that could influence professional growth. So that's what got me to this point. Now I'm the executive vice president of franchise at Sandler, helping groom people to come into our network.
That's awesome. Well, first of all, congratulations on your success. And it sounds like you've pretty much seen everything. And yeah. And yeah, we'd like to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly sometimes. And today's topic is killer weaknesses. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, one of the things that we've learned about human beings is in anything we do, there are those weaknesses that are embedded in us. They're natural tendencies and the like. They happen years 1 through 6 typically, and we drag them into sales. And so I found that there are 4 killer weaknesses that salespeople have to be aware of that they may deal with, because each one of them will prevent them from being successful. And, the first one is need for approval. Those salespeople who have a need to be liked by their prospects and by the people around them. And that need is stronger than their need to be successful. And so we know all human beings have a need to be liked. But the problem is when it enters into the business world and overrides the need to be successful, that's a problem. The second one is fear of rejection, that fear of hearing no. And so salespeople who have the fear of rejection won't accept no. They'll always not accept it, but they won't be able to deal with no. So the fear of getting it means they will take think it overs. And you can't take a think it over to the bank. And so in those maybes and could be's and think it overs, what we find is no business is done, obviously, but the salesperson feels good about it because at least they didn't get the no. Third one, money tolerance. We all learn about money at a very early age. When we talk to our parents and people in authority about money, either we wind up with an abundance mentality or a scarcity mentality. Those with a scarcity mentality typically have a low money concept, which means if a salesperson has that, every time the prospect says your price is too high, the salesperson is willing to negotiate it down to what their money tolerance allows them to say. And the last one is belief in self. We find that salespeople with a strong belief in self, we call it ego, right? Ego sometimes is misread as cockiness, and it's not. But a strong belief in self, that ability to work with who you are and be confident with who you are, regardless of the role you're in. So, James, those are the big 4 for me. And, we can delve into them any way you want.
I'd love to. Let's unpack those for a second. I'd like to start with belief in self. I'd like to start from the last one and work ourselves back to the first. Is that fair?
That works for me for sure.
Awesome. So when it comes to belief in self and ego, I'd say looking at today's sellers, with all the technology out there and, all these moving parts and AI and all this other stuff that I hear a lot is AI going to replace salespeople? And one of the things I always say is that it's definitely going to replace salespeople, the bad ones. So how does that translate to 2023, 2024 with a lot of uncertainty from a technological perspective, but also for more sophisticated and modern buyers?
We look at the balance of technology and behavior. There'll never be a replacement for salespeople. There will be enhancements to salespeople. And I think smart salespeople are using AI to their benefit. They're using recordings. A good example, as simple as a recording of their sales call to come back to them and say, I need to handle objections better. That's the simplest form of AI, right? And so then when we go forward, how does a salesperson really write emails that are more effective? Well, you still have to have some talent to do that, but AI will help you enhance that talent. So I think there's a wonderful marriage between technology and actually the physical nature of selling that will make those salespeople who can harness it in the top 20%. The other area of that, James, is we break salespeople into 20, 60, 20. 20% of salespeople are high performers. Those are the ones that are using AI to enhance their work. 60% of salespeople are middle of the roaders, average or at leasters. And they're the ones who don't know how to use it. They want to. We have to teach them how to use it. And then there's the bottom 20% who fear it, who believe it will replace them. And those are the ones that probably shouldn't be in sales, as harsh as that sounds.
Yeah, I agree. And so is it because there are some that just won't want to try new things, or they can't try new things? I mean, is it because they won't want to, I'd say, change their behaviors, or they can't change their behaviors?
Yeah, it's about application, right? We know that salespeople succeed for three areas: skills, knowledge, and application. And so those that won't change or can't change just won't apply new things, right? They learn them, but they won't apply them because the fear inside of them keeps them from applying them. So I think the issue is for salespeople to learn new skills, to know what to do with those skills. But here's what separates top 20%ers from bottom 20%ers: the ability to blindly apply them, knowing that they have the skill and knowledge. And in that blind application, they will succeed.
And how do sales leaders recognize these days what they're if they're A players or real A players, or maybe disguised C players, B players, and so on? What does sales leadership have in place today in order to have control and knowledge over what's really happening under the hood?
Sales leaders have to be able to define success. And defining success means they have to know what the top 10 behaviors are for any salesperson in their company. We've determined that there are top 10 behaviors that salespeople need to perform, and they're modified by company. The first one is lead generation or prospecting. Salespeople have to be good at that, because without prospects, you can't use their system anyway. Next is building gold level relationships. Can they develop relationships, or are they accepting whatever the relationship is at its base level? The third, qualifying opportunity. We look at qualifying and disqualifying as a key behavior. And then making presentations that close, which means your system has to put you in the place where a presentation will close and not just dump information. Servicing customers. We want to make sure that we have a good service model, because servicing customers makes people want to stay with us longer. And then account management, growing our accounts, and territory development. And my favorite, building a cookbook. James, you know how powerful a cookbook is, and that's the behavior model that makes people successful. Continuous education. Are we continuing to grow, or did we stop learning years ago and realize that that's all we need? And lastly, a selling system. We love the Sandler system because that's who we are. But people who use systems in general in sales will succeed. Ours happens to be better, I believe. But again, they will succeed. So those are the top 10 that build the success profile that sales leaders have to focus on.
Let's talk a little bit about the money tolerance part. I love that. And I think, we're in the money business. Salespeople and I say this a lot, when we're little, we're told, one, don't talk to strangers,
Yes.
Don't talk about money, and stop asking so many questions. And then we go out to the big bad world. And what are we expected to do to make a living? Talk to strangers by asking lots of questions about money. So money tolerance. Let's unpack that one. Tell me more.
We look at scarcity or abundance. My father, a blue collar worker, a printer for all his life, yet he didn't have a scarcity mentality. He spent money wisely. He spent money against value. And so that's what he instilled in me, is that money spent against something that has value is a wise purchase. Money spent or money not spent at all because you're afraid you're going to lose it is foolish. And so he created in me the value model. And the value model is simply does this product or service have value to me? And then if it does, is in my mind, the price that I'm going to pay for it a balancing on that scale of value versus price? And that's something that salespeople have to have when they talk to a prospect. The prospects are all designed to say your price is too high. And by the way, they learn to say it louder and louder each time because they realize that the salesperson's flinch will be, okay, if it's too high, then. And so we have to make sure that we as salespeople are establishing what we believe is proper value in the eyes of the buyer. Proper value is, what is it worth to them? How does it resolve their pain? And then create an appropriate price model for it that allows the buyer to say, there's value there because it's helping me save X amount of dollars. That's an abundant mentality versus a scarcity one.
Interesting. Yeah, I think it's quite apparent, especially in this environment right now. Everyone's running to give a discount. Everyone's running to over service, margins going down. I hear some horrible stories sometimes. I'm like, well, I got my salespeople giving discounts and closing deals. Oh, they're closing deals, but they're giving discounts. Why? Well, they thought it was the right thing to do. And yeah, I'm just trying to unpack that. And at the end of the day, companies then wonder why things are not going as well as
when I hear your price is too high from a prospect, in my mind, it translates to, Bill, you haven't created value. It doesn't mean, Bill, you have to lower your price to create value. It means you haven't created value in their eyes. And so I accept that on me to create value.
I like it. That's a huge takeaway. Salespeople out there, did you just hear that? Whenever you hear your price is too high, think to this, that you probably did not create enough value in that interaction. It's probably not painful enough for them.
Yeah, good point. That's the way to put it too.
Yeah. Awesome. Fear of rejection.
We know no. Salespeople hear no more than they hear yes. And so those of us who have heard enough no's get accustomed to it, but we also get accustomed to dealing with it. Dealing with no means no is not no until I accept it. It doesn't mean just because the prospect says it that I should say okay and go away. But what it says to me is I should be asking questions as to where that no comes from. And typically, the concept of 5 whys. Sakichi Toyoda, the Japanese engineer, created the concept of 5 whys. You ask anybody why 5 times, you'll get to the reality, the base reality of why they're saying no. And so, our challenge with no is to make sure we're just not accepting it at face value, because all prospects are wired to tell us no to begin with, because they realize that that's when the salesperson does their best work, or that's when they cave to price. So fear of rejection is within all of us. We all have that need to hear yes, but the reality is we're going to get a lot more no's than yeses.
Yeah, I heard an interesting stat. Apparently, a child hears the word no, 180,000 times before the age of 18. And yeah.
Wow. It would really, and how many of those children go into sales, right? And how many of those really know what to do with it at that point?
And how many of those children are second, third, fourth child, the fifth? Think about that. I mean, yeah, we're hardwired for no, and I like to embrace the no.
Yeah.
If someone's giving me a no, then it's just natural. Great, let's get the no and then start. Yes.
That's when selling really starts, because chimpanzees could sell if we're only getting yeses. And so the idea of no means we have to now put our neuroscience package to work and understand how we're going to deal with it.
Absolutely. And finally, need for approval.
Yeah, that's the good news about human beings is we all have a need to be liked. That's what makes us social animals, that need to be liked by our friends, by our relatives and things like that. It's a wonderful thing in our personal life because it makes us human. Now, the challenge of it is many people drag that into sales. And so they go into the sales call trying to be liked by the prospect. And we know this, that prospects are onto that. And so they will withhold love. They will withhold right, from a salesperson, because that's how they control the sale. And so in my mind, when I look at it, there are 2 ways to understand like. You can go into a sales call to be liked by the prospect or to be like the prospect. And so being like the prospect means the concept of mirroring and matching. Paying attention to those things within the prospect that are visible and invisible that you can mirror and match, because that's where social bonding comes from. when we look at people who are like us, we feel more comfortable. So social bonding is a key. If you look at it, be like them as opposed to be liked by them.
Yeah, I love that. Be like them as opposed to being liked. And yeah, it's one of those scenarios. Sales is like a relationship. You know, two people in a relationship, one loves the other more. Who controls a relationship?
Yeah, that's a great
I
point.
mean, yeah, it's there. And by the way, I think it's a great time to give a shout out to our sponsors, Novacy. And Novacy unlock behavioral insights from virtual meetings to close more deals and give their customers the ability of really understanding what's happening under the hood with their prospects and with their salespeople, so they can understand what their emotions are and what the behavior looks like. So thanks, Novacy, for supporting us on this podcast. Bill, what is your secret sauce for selling?
Yeah, I learned this from a mentor of mine many, many years ago, and that is choice. Our success is determined by the choices that we make. And so when I take a look at me, am I making good choices in sales or bad choices? Bad choices are when I'm in the third week of the month and I haven't hit my quote, and all of a sudden I'm lowering my price and doing foolish things just to make a number. But good choices are about value. Am I creating value? And I'll go back to the 20-60-20. And if I'm going to consider myself a top 20%er, I better make choices that other people won't make. That's what's going to separate me from the pack. So again, going back to David Sandler for a minute, behavior, attitude, and technique becomes my secret sauce. Do I understand the behaviors that I have to perform? That's the B. A, attitude. Have I strengthened my belief system every day, working on who I am and what I do, not just what I do? And lastly, am I continuously upgrading my skill set, technique, and making sure that things like AI and all the new technology that we're confronted with today are of use to me, not of something that I believe holds me back. So that BAT model for me was life-changing when I first learned it.
And how does that translate to I'd say the younger generation of sales professionals out there these days? That have got, yes, more access to technology, but I think also different beliefs with regards to the profession of sales and the profession of sales leadership. What are your thoughts?
Balance. We keep hearing the concept of balance in our young professionals. That's what they crave today. They're not willing, and nor should anybody be willing to work 15-hour days, right? I mean, that just burns you out. And so the concept of balance, sales leaders have to understand that two things that will help their young salespeople grow is coaching and mentoring. Do they have a coaching program and a mentoring? And in that coaching program, are they working on the being as well as the work part of it? So helping young people understand that it is important to balance their personal growth with their professional growth. What I love to think about is the rule of 3 and 2, that sales leaders should work with their people on helping them set 3 professional goals every day that make them stronger in their job, and 2 personal goals that make them feel good about themselves while they're hearing the no's and things like that.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Bill actually wrote the book about coaching.
Yeah.
I mean, Bill, why don't you give us a couple of words on your book?
I've spent a lot of my Sandler career as a coach, and I believe that coaching creates wisdom where training creates knowledge. And so I wrote the sales book that's called The Sales Coach's Playbook, Breaking the Performance Code. And that Sales Coach's Playbook is a roadmap for managers to work with salespeople, but also salespeople who purchase it find that it helps them do self-coaching, right? And so, it comes out of the fact that there are people, wonderful people who are clients of mine who taught me things through the years that I was able to put into a book to help others. And so I thank you for bringing it up. It's something I'm very proud of. It took a year of my life to write it.
Yeah, I've got I got a client, and they had this big thing on the wall. I never forget. It's the beginning of my career at Sandler, and it said, "Always be closing." Now I closed a deal with him, and I said to the VP sales, I said, "Listen, I'll do. We're going to work together, but I have one request." He's like, "What is it?" I said, "Please remove that sign." And he says, "Why? ABC, always be closing." I said, "Well, in our world, it's ABC, always be contracting, and ABC, always be coaching. Don't be telling, even if it's with your prospect. Ask them the questions. Ask to be coached by those who are in charge of that. Coach yourself. I think it's first of all, it's an awesome book, Bill. Thank you so much. And that book has been a tremendous influence on my career and many people I know and many of my clients. And I thank you again.
Thank you. It's very kind of you.
Bill, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming aboard. I think my last question to you is: are there anything that you're exposed to these days? Any podcast, books? It could be even a movie. Anything that you find to be super interesting with regards to where we are today, with regards to selling, and you'd like to share with the listeners?
I go back to an old book that was turned into a play, and that is Glenn Ross. And I just watched the movie again last night, talking about, how bad sales leaders influence salespeople and how bad salespeople really give us a bad name. And so that whole concept of making sure that I'm not like that was key for me. I believe in the growth that we all have to have. And in that Glenn Ross, what we see is the stereotype that many people are still living today, unfortunately.
That is gold. Thank you so much, Bill. I appreciate your wisdom, and this has been great. And to listeners, thanks for joining us on another episode, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you, James.